But yeah, so we're going to talk about All Quiet on the Western Front. Before we do, let's just give our
general thoughts.
Well, would you recommend it?
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Okay, so
yeah, I thought it was a really good movie. It's this. I think it's the best foreign war movie I've seen, and it's one of the better foreign movies I've ever seen. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, I'm still, there was some stuff I'm still going through. I recommend it. I think it's one of the better things on Netflix, like I was telling you before we started. I can actually recommend something on Netflix. Now, if you're not into war movies, if you're not into stuff that is very depressing, might not be. It's kind of depressing.
Yeah, it's depressing. It's heavy.
It's a heavy. Yeah.
Man, what's that? Remember when we watched that movie with Adam Driver and the chick from Killing Eve? What's her name? And Matt Damon in it. What was that? The Last Night or something like that. Whatever.
Oh
something.
yeah.
It starts with a V, and I thought about it the other day.
The Last Duel.
The Last Duel. That movie. Oh, man, what's that word that starts with it? It's not vitriol. It's not vivid.
Visceral.
Visceral.
Is that the word you're looking for?
Yep. It's very visceral. This movie is, and I enjoy it. The heavy tones of it, the reality of what war is, and I think it's perfect timing too with everything that's been going on between Russia and Ukraine, and just really people can see. It does a good job of seeing the reality of war, and the narrative of it is. These kids start out as, man, I want to go into the war. It's going to be great. They're gung ho. And then reality quickly sets in for them. And, by the end of the movie, you see what the toll it has taken on them. And I think it goes into some shell shock, PTSD in it, and a lot of good subplots and themes and undertones in the movie as well. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
I may have teared up a couple times too. You
definitely liked it more than I did. I agree with everything you're saying. I think just more on a personal level, it didn't get me quite as much as some other stuff has.
Yeah.
I don't know if it probably wouldn't make my personal top 3. War movies War movies are tough for me, because you get. I think a lot of it relies on the pacing, because the story itself, you kind of get an automatic pass because a lot of it happens. So there's not, unless the people creating it just do a terrible job with the plotting, and they just skip stuff, and you're like, wait, how did we get here? Like what? Which I don't think happens very often. Most war movies that I've seen are pretty solid.
Right.
I don't know how people think about the one that Christopher Nolan made a few years ago. The name of it's slipping my mind. That one kind of came and went.
England?
Yeah. Dunkirk.
That's
Sometimes it takes me a second. Mine's got to run through the library. There's stuff I liked about that one, and it's actually stuff that I liked about this as well. That this almost borderline feels like a horror movie.
Yeah, it's very gruesome.
The soundtrack.
I like the soundtrack.
The way that I'm mixed on some of it, and I'll tell you specifically the thing that kind of annoyed me in a minute. But I think for the most part, it does a really good job of setting the tone and the atmosphere of what not only war was like for a lot of the conscripts. So these people who are
the peasants.
Yeah, they're these kids, or just the men who have relatively normal lives, and we see that through one of the characters in particular, and it's not, the movie is not hopeful at all, which is fine. Nope. And I like the theme for once, and something else I don't say very often. I like the themes in this, because you get a lot of imagery of these in the opening. This is this first scene. You get a lot of this imagery of how chaotic it is, People don't know what's going on. People are dying around them. And this is really setting the scene for everything that's going on in the movie.
Yep. Foreshadowing, right?
Yes.
Of what you're about to see.
Yes. And I like a lot of that. And we'll get into some of the themes later on. But follow-up thoughts.
Yeah. So, man, it's definitely heavy, and I agree with you.
Spoilers.
I do think
spoilers from now on too. By the way,
Yeah.
so we're watch it. Definitely a recommend. And then we're because we have to talk about like even if it's in vague terms, there's certain things that happen throughout the movie that we have to be able to talk about. So.
Well, let's just talk about it. Let's not even worry about that's what we do. Take things frame by frame, but without having to feel any pressure. So hey, last warning: it's going to be total spoilers. Talk about everything. If you haven't seen it and you want to watch it before we spoil it, now's the time to cut off the review and go watch it. It's a great movie. Recommend it. I do think, to follow up with your thoughts, I do think that the soundtrack could have been better, even though I liked it.
Yeah.
But I will say that it's
sorry, go ahead.
It's a World War I movie. It's based on World War I, and I enjoy the fact that it's from the German perspective in World War I, which I think is the route, a better route to take than doing the German perspective of World War II.
Yes.
That's a little bit more difficult to put on screen and get people to come see.
But
great way to create controversy, though.
It has been done, and you had mentioned the pianist before, and there's another one.
Oh, I don't know. Tell me.
Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Jojo Rabbit.
And I know Taika Waititi is controversial, but up until that point, like most
Jojo Rabbit's a good movie.
Yeah, the stuff that he has done before, I will defend What We Do in the Shadows, Hunt for the Wilder People, and Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, that's a good movie. Hunt for the Wilder People.
And to a degree, Thor Ragnarok. Other than that,
yeah.
Yes, I understand that the guy's got a massive ego. Everyone in the industry does, and yes, Love and Thunder is arguably an awful film. So I understand why people hate him. He's made some good movies. Anyway, sorry.
So we don't really have many, to my knowledge, many war movies from the German perspective, specifically regarding World War I. And I think, it's not even one of the things I enjoyed is they didn't do the Germans are the bad guys or the Allied forces are the bad guys. Really kind of what you get is that general at the end. He's the one that's kind of more of what a quote unquote villain because of it. And even with him, you kind of see the funny thing is knowing the history of this. And I specifically took one of my favorite classes I took in college was the history of World War II. But in order to understand World War II from the diplomacy side, we had to understand World War I and the diplomacy of that.
Yeah.
And so knowing the context that the Treaty of Versailles is one of the primary instigators of World War II, and that German commander, captain or general, and this actually ended up being right on when he was speaking about the Democrat, whatever his counterparts within the German government. There are some things he was right on that, hey, if we take this route, this is what's going to happen. That actually ends up happening and leading to World War II because they were forced to accept these horrific terms that never before in Europe that a defeating country had to accept. And so, anyway.
That's when you talk about that, one of the things that's so cool is that the themes in it, you're getting the perspective of this has to end. Mm-hmm. There's for Germany in this, there is no good outcome.
Yeah,
they stay in. They're essentially wiping out their youth.
Yep.
Because you even see it at the end of the movie that they're still conscripting a lot of the youth into the army, into their military. And what you get the perspective and sort of this theme about those, like the haves and the have-nots to a degree, where all of they consider the those who are younger and then those who like can't read or have jobs that may not be, and this is all scattered throughout. Like it's not really specifically stated that I can remember. kind of
You
like
had to pick
visual
up on it.
storytelling. And some of it should be pretty obvious, but And so you have like the kids, right? So they show this entire scene at the beginning where a young man is going through the front lines I believe on the Western Front. I think that's like the whole theme that they're getting at. He's on the front lines, and then he dies. And we follow, and I actually really like this. So I love the opening of this movie. We essentially follow his jacket through.
Yes.
Yeah, we follow the jacket through to when it's getting repatched.
The main protagonist is going to
get the same jacket, and there's like a bullet hole. So the details are really nice. Like there's a bullet hole in it, and they show how the women are
patching it up.
And then we meet our main cast, pretty much our main cast of characters. There's a few that you don't meet till later on. Maybe it's just me. I was having a really hard time kind of keeping up with all of the individual characters in this.
No, I had a hard time too. I think it's because of the foreign language, though.
It's possible it's that. I'm going to go with that for now.
The subtitles for me moved really fast where I'd have to pause and rewind so I could. And again, that takes you a bit out of the immersion when you have to do that.
Jake said failed artists in the.
But when you have. I think with this film, one of the things that did annoy me was how fast the subtitles were moving to where I couldn't read them fast enough.
Yeah, you got to get good, man.
Yeah, I guess I do.
I told you got to start watching anime. That'll fix your problem.
And I'm just like, guys, just a hair longer.
Now,
I felt like I was always like
I understand.
A hair behind, like 0.2 seconds behind.
Sometimes the subtitles don't linger the way that they need to. I think that is a completely fair thing to say. But yeah, I like.
It's not the entire movie; it's just at specific times.
I like the opening. They do a really good job of showing how most of these young men are Well, that's not the young men.
Completely brainwashed.
Well, they've essentially been told that them going to the front line is this like great honor, that they'll go, that that things will be great for them, and they're being lied to, and that it's just about throwing bodies out. It's as many bodies as they can possibly muster to try to push forward. And I don't mind I think that 1917 also did a good job of this. They're showing the horrors of war.
Yeah. The reality of it.
Yeah, the end of the movie does a really good job of just kind of recapping, like, hey, this is how many people died during the war. They only managed to get, 100 meters in either direction on the front line the entire time.
For both sides.
You being the history major, what was the time frame for World War I?
Ooh,
because it ended in 1918. Is that right? Is that when this ends?
Yeah, I want to say.
I wasn't sure if they ever gave us like the opening date for it, and I don't remember.
Let me see. I don't remember either. Was it 1914 to 18? Yep, 1914 to 18.
14 to 18.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So this takes place roughly, but in the middle to the end.
Yeah.
Literally to the end, which is something I thought was really cool. I don't know if you see that very often in war movies, where
I think it's about 1916 when it starts, because there's a point to where it forwards 2 years, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, right in the middle.
And so we're getting all of this. Paul is our main character. It's like the one person's name that I remember from the movie.
He's the only one I remember.
And name wise. And his friend with glasses, who we'll see in a minute, that I was trying to keep track of everyone's names. I did a terrible job doing it.
Yeah. So it was difficult to do.
And so this is the jacket. And I think he even notices in this shot that it belonged. He says to this guy, he's like, "Hey, this jacket belonged to someone else," because it had, the guy's name was like Heinrich or something like that, and it was inside the jacket. And I was just like, okay. I was like, no matter where this movie goes, I can at least give it credit for doing something interesting in the opening. And the fact that not only does he say that, but the guy that's in charge over here who's sending him off is basically like, oh, no, you don't need to worry about that. It's not his jacket anymore. It's not important. I think he rips out the tag. So very,
and
very
then
interesting.
It shoots to his buddy. The camera pans to the guy's foot, I think, at the end of this scene, and you see all the other tags that he has ripped out of everyone else's names,
that's
the other
right.
jackets.
That's right. He
And I
does
was like,
do
man,
that.
I love that touch. It sets the reality in. You know, you get right away, you know, hey, a ton of people have died at this point.
The details. Oh yeah, let's see. I just saw it.
Yeah, you just had it.
Try to go back. Ugh. This is what happens when I don't record things. Anyway, you're right. It's a great little detail. And I don't know if I can only play this for like a couple seconds
At a time.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll get. There it is.
There it is.
Yeah, Heinrich. I was right. Or was kind of close to that guy's
Netflix,
name.
if you're watching this, we like this movie. So it's positive.
Please. Yeah. It's totally fine. We're far enough into it's probably okay. Yeah. So really great, and it just all of the lead up. You know, he's got his his friend with glasses, who's important. His other buddies that are there, so it's like him and three of his friends.
Right.
They've gone to school together, and they're now setting out to go out to the front lines together. And it's interesting.
And this kid had our main protagonist. He had to forge his parents' signature in order to join the war. And so it's very much, you know, they're told right before they get their clothes, as we said, that honor and respect is tied to this. And man, just right away, they get this clothes. They have this positive outlet. They think, hey, I think they make the comment, we're going to be doing this for 2 weeks and then we'll be out of here. Right.
Yeah.
And you should just see that naive thought process they have and how they've been suckered into thinking these ill-advised concepts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very, they very much love their country. I was talking to somebody about this before, and it's this mentality of kind of like king and country, and we're going off to fight for them, and most of them don't realize that they're basically being used for their bodies. Like that's essentially what's going on. But they have manipulated them in a way to make them believe that this is like the best thing that they can be doing right now.
Yeah.
They even mess with Paul. His friends mess with him where they're like, oh yeah, I think he says like, oh, your mom just wants you to stay home or whatever, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you realize that his mother was probably right.
Yep. So yeah, they're heading off to the Western Front at this point. They're on the supply line and go ahead.
I was going to move up to this part right here, like you were saying, because they're heading up, and this is kind of the first moment that they realize they kind of get shook into reality.
Yeah, with the artillery fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. You see in this moment, like, you know, the captain, tells everyone to put on their gas mask, and Paul helps his friend put his on before he puts his cell phone in. The captain says, "You're not going to last 2 weeks. You're going to die."
Yeah,
and just that grim reality setting in.
What's interesting too is that he helps his friend first.
Yep.
So he helps his friend put on his gas mask, and so all his like this guy who's talking to him when he says like, oh, you're gonna be like the first to die or whatever, he doesn't understand. He I guess he didn't see what happened because he doesn't specifically state that he saw what Paul did. So you can, I guess you could take it either way, right?
Okay.
And for me, that was a moment of like, oh, his buddy is in trouble. Mm-hmm. It's not that Paul is necessarily the one that's in trouble, even though you could read into it and say, if you help your friends out here, that could cost you your life. Mm-hmm. It's completely reasonable to believe that too. The way I kind of saw it more was like, oh, his friend who was like struggling, and Paul had to be the one to like help him through this. Like, that's not going to end well for him.
Yeah, that's not going to be good.
Now, I'll say this, something that it's more of like I think subjective or a little personal to me, is that I wish that they had done a little bit more with the gas in this. I don't know if you noticed that. It's subtle. It's there. They do touch on it, especially towards the end of the movie, and they do here as well. I thought that this
yellow gas. Yeah,
I thought that this was going to kind of like foreshadow or be setting up a specific scene with the gas, and it doesn't really come. Not for the not for the main cast.
For the main cast.
And
in a way it does, but not in the sense that you'd probably expect. I get where you're coming from with that.
I like the way that they handled it. I'm not saying that. I also kind of wish that we had gotten, especially with the tone of this movie and the way that it's really kind of showing the horrors of World War I. I kind of wish that they had done that.
On that brutal
and
aspect.
and given us a moment of that. I don't know if like there was like a specific reason why they didn't, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I thought it would have been nice, just as far as like with the tone of the way this movie is going, because they set this up as if that is going to come up later, and not in the way that we got it, but in a more like our characters are going to have to go through this, and so that
we don't really get to see the mustard gas, come through, and I do think that it would have been nice, but I think I do like the way they touched on it. It'd been nice to get in a scene that way. We do get, I thought we'll get there. The scene at the end, with kind of what leads them to retreat from the trenches it was cool seeing, having those aspects in it. But we get this opening scene to where they get to the trenches and.
Paul has had to wear his mask the entire time. His punishment for helping his friend, he has to wear his gas mask the entire time.
So he's taking in the fresh air. And then this is when we get met with eventually another of the main cast.
Cat? Is that his name?
For short, Stanislas is his first name, but his last name is Kaczynski.
And they call him
for short.
And they call him Cat. Yeah. Probably my favorite character in the movie. I can't exactly. I liked his attitude. I like the way that he is. He's a little older than them, and like he's got a little bit of that wisdom. It seems like he's been around on the front lines longer.
Just another Wednesday.
Yeah, they do a decent job of setting his character up. We get to learn a little bit about him as it goes on, and his family. It's kind of a weird way for them to do it, but he has this pretty like touching moment with Paul where they're both sitting on the toilet. They're at their like the toilet's like far outside of the camp, and they have this kind of like touching moment where Kat talks to Paul about how his son died. Like he gets a letter, and because Kat can't read, he lets Paul read it to him. And that's how Paul kind of finds out more about this guy. And I think that's one of the biggest moments in the movie where their relationship is really like forged.
It's a touching moment.
Yeah. And man, I'll tell you, one of the things I really liked about this is that I think my favorite moments in it are all of the moments that aren't involved with the war.
Yep. Is that nice?
It's
because you get that break.
Yeah. But for me, it was like, it's these characters that are surviving despite the hell that they're going through.
Yep.
And so they're still trying to like get things done. There's like the scene where they steal the goose from the farmer, which comes up later. That is a payoff. We get a setup and we get a payoff with that. So I think the cinematography is great in this. It's why I keep stopping on like certain shots or like showing certain things because I like the way that it looks.
Kat is definitely the wisdom person in the show for the main group of characters, right? He's the sage, the leader, the where you get the voice of reason and wisdom from. And it's kind of amazing, like watching this show. You would think, like, man, like no one thought, hey, we should not charge at the enemy where it would be open fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just send them, just like cattle, literally, just sending them to be slaughtered. It's insane into where you have to listen to your commanders no matter what.
Yeah.
Or else you see in this, like at the end there.
Yep.
When you don't listen, even though the war is literally over in like 15 minutes, they get shot because they're considered traitors.
I know. And I like, there's part of this that I was, and we'll get to it, but I was like, y'all just kind of hang back. Like, don't put your full effort into it. You know what I mean? It's like, like, just be smart about this. Like, it's only 15 minutes. There's got to be a way for you to, like,
Yeah.
And
to finagle this.
I have, like, at least in my head, a reasoning as to why the movie kind of ends the way that it does and the way that they go about showing all of that with Paul. But we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is kind of the first he and his friend are on guard duty because they got in trouble earlier, and this is when they get their first attack by the French, and they have to run and get into the shelter because the French start shelling them.
With artillery.
Yeah. And so it happens, and they're running.
Oh, yeah.
And they're in there. I really liked this. It's, a good, it's more set up for showing like what's actually happening. And
glasses start. His buddy with the glasses start.
He starts
crying, saying,
out.
"I can't take it."
And doesn't he start hitting his head against the wall?
Yep. Has a panic attack.
I think.
And it just really captures just the reality of what happens in war,
Yeah, and one of the guys, you have this one guy who it like freaks out and runs out, and he goes boom,
boom,
and that like you could probably say like that is that moment for them.
Yep.
Like
it's like, oh crap,
for all of these kids. I know they're 18.
This is it.
Or
younger. I think I don't think they're just 18, are they?
No, they had because you had to be 18.
I thought it was 16.
I'm pretty sure they said in the movie that they were 18.
Okay.
Because Paul was born in 1899 and it's 1917.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so he's like he's either right on the edge of 18 or he is 18, but I think that's what they're trying to imply. Again, subtle. You can get the information out there as part of the movie without having to do something where you're like, this is Paul. He's our main character. He is 18 years old. He's very excited about joining the military to go fight. You know what I mean? It
feel like Rings of Power.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going through this whole scenario, and they get blown up. The bunker essentially gets caved in. Some of the people get out, and some of them don't. I was trying to see if there was a good moment where he's like, it's like, the guy gets blown up and he's telling everybody to get out. Oh, there he is. He's beating his head against the wall. Yeah. They're all freaking out about what's going on. Paul gets caved in, and when he wakes up, he sees sort of the you get the aftermath of everything that's going on.
And you see his buddy is dead.
Yeah.
The guy.
Well,
one
he
of
goes
that was beside him. Yep.
Yeah, he goes through a lot of the different bodies because they basically are like, "Are you okay?" And then they have to get the tags from their friends and put them in a bag.
You sit with him for a minute, and he sits down, and I think Kat gives him a piece of bread, and he eats it, and then the commander comes and says, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah," and he says, hands him a bag, and that's when he starts picking up the tags, and he finds his buddy with the glasses.
Yeah, he actually steps on the glasses first.
Yep. It's very nice touch.
Then he finds him, and it's brutal. I mean, I flashed that part of his buddy, and it turns out his leg got like blown off too, like the bottom part of it.
The detail in this movie is really superb. It's really good.
Yeah, I like the cinematography. I was very pleased with the way that everything was shot. I think even the color grading, it is very well done. It is very well done.
Cinematography, color grading, editing. I mean, directing.
I should have mentioned the thing that it's because it happens when they're all marching off at the very beginning after they've gotten their uniforms. There's this like French horn noise in this movie that very much irritated me, and I don't think I don't think that's the intention. I think the intention is it's supposed to add, because a lot of the music, it adds to that tension and that being uncomfortable with what's going on, which is well done. This French horn was driving me nuts. I thought at first it was actually something in the movie, like it was some sort of horn that was, I don't know, like telling them that they're marching off to war. But you hear it throughout the movie at different times, and I'm like, personally, bad choice. Like, you should have just left that out, because there's something to be said about quiet moments and allowing certain things to just be on screen without the excess of music or whatever in the background. And for me, that was one of the things I'm like, you could have left that out. You've established well enough what these kids are getting into, so not having to have like rising music in these moments or these sort of like eerie noises that are going on. I personally, I think it just would have been better, but
yeah.
Anyway, so you get the scene of the people counting, and again, what we've been kind of talking about with the themes, where there's sort of the haves and the have-nots, and or that being one of the themes. You get this moment of them counting the bottom of these dog tags that belong to the soldiers, and just how mechanical the whole process is. Yep. Like they're just like, well, this is what it is, and he's like writing the names down because I assume they're going to send letters to the family or inform the families of what's happened to these people,
and letting the general know how many people have died.
Yes,
because of where they're at in the war.
Yeah, and they one of the things he says is he almost does a oh, that's sad anyway, because it's like one of the names that he picks up, he's like, oh, it was his birthday yesterday. And he's like, huh, and he just like throws it and he moves on to the next one. And so you can see how interesting all of this is set up, and we get introduced to one of the characters who is essentially trying to stop the war. Yeah. He's the one who's got
the guy from Avengers, right?
Is that who that is?
Yeah, I think so.
Who plays Zemo?
I think so. I'm going to check.
You can check. I thought that might have been him, but I honestly couldn't tell. And also, I didn't know he knew German. So there's that.
Let's see.
But yeah, he is essentially assigned with getting the French.
Yep, Zemo.
It is him. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great in this. Really liked his role. Another one of the characters that I really enjoyed when he was on screen. I liked that he's the guy that is trying to be the voice of reason to everyone, whereas you have the general who is kind of the guy who is the opposite. You understand his character, but he also does something at the end that you're like, oh.
No. Yeah.
And the worst part is like, I didn't know it was coming, but I knew it was coming, like what he ends up doing at the end. And so, yeah, I really liked this, and that they're going through sort of this process of, the war needs to end. We need to bring these people home. We've lost so many people because, like we were talking about at the start, you have this scenario where it's a lose-lose situation. It's like we stay in this war. If we let our pride get in the way, lots more people are going to die. You're talking about something that could have potentially wiped out so many people.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get this across. It's like it's time to end this. And then he gets the deal later on, and you see that too, where it's like your options aren't good either way. Like Germany's essentially screwed whether we do one thing or the other, but you're basically, he has to decide like, no, this has got to be the better option no matter what. So I like that because it doesn't leave you with like a sense of things are like working out, or you don't have this triumph at the end of the movie for really any of the characters. It's very somber. It's very sad the way that everything ends. And I appreciate it.
It's very much real.
Yeah,
the realism in it is nice because, as you said, I don't want to spoil it just yet until we get there. But the journey you go on is it's nice and sad. But
we catch up with Paul again. This is where they steal the goose, which I thought was great. And this stretch of the movie is probably some of my favorite because, like I was saying, a lot of the stuff that isn't involved in the actual war, I just liked it. I liked the character development. I like getting to see them all interacting with each other. This is roughly 2 years later. They're actually heading in
towards the end of the war.
Yeah, they're heading towards the end of the war.
And they're still in this goose so that they can have meat to eat because they've, have only been eating potatoes. And so you get to see that. And it's kind of this nice, fun moment, but dangerous as well.
Yes. It does come back. That is a set. Them stealing the goose from the farm is a setup for later in the movie. So yeah, there are, but they're not thinking about that. You know what I mean? Like for them, after you've kind of been on the front line, you've been involved in this and you've survived, I would assume nothing feels as dangerous. Stealing from a farmer, any sort of interaction with strangers, whatever the case may be. It seems to me that is. Oh, sorry. Hi, Mila.
Yeah. Welcome to the troll room.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, they everything that they've been doing, it just like this is like their normal life now.
Yep.
So them like going and taking a goose from a farmer, no big deal. Like from their perspective.
Because of everything they're going through and the fact that they haven't had meat in so long and just these things that they've missed, and you get this other nice scene of women coming by their camp, right, and they're like, oh wow, we haven't seen women in so long, and they're waving at them, and their buddy, the guy in the red hair right there, goes and actually meets the women and end up going off with them. And but I think like this, I think you're right, like this, the interactions between them right here are some of the best parts of the movie, because you get that great character development. And I forget, they like during all this, I don't know, was it right before this or right after this scene, to where they start asking Paul his opinion on, man, it's been since Saturday since I watched the movie, so I can't exactly remember, but just some good discussion right here.
Yeah, they talk about the future, what they want to do. One of them says that he wants to be in some sort of specific, I guess it's like a military unit.
Yeah, he wants what's his name? I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, but Jordan says that he wants to be a specialist in the military police.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
And I think it's him back here. Or no, it's him. This is Yathan.
And they're like, yeah, you're not gonna. Or Kat says to him, you're not gonna be able to do that, and kind of is a dismissive of him and brings his mood down, discourages him. And Jordan's like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then they ask Paul what he wants to be, and I can't remember what Paul says. Do you remember?
I know he said something about going to school. Like that's and I know Kat later on in the movie tells him that he needs to like go to college, that he's like, you're smart, you've been educated, that's what you need to do. And so I think that's the case, but I can't quite remember.
It'd be all right.
I never noticed before. This is a plane over here in the background.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just the details of where they're living. You see the planes flying over them like all the time throughout the movie.
Yeah, like when they were going to the woods, I think, to take a dump. You see the planes fighting, and I'm like, man, that's just I think that's the scene where you see it. But
yeah, you do. They're in one of the angles you see the planes flying from outside the trees.
And it's just a nice touch, and they're not even paying attention. They don't care. They're just like, hey, that's their.
It's become reality for them, which is I like, man. I can, like I said, it's probably not like from a technical perspective. This movie is excellent. It's very, very well done. And the more I talk about it, honestly, I think the more it sort of endears itself to me. And it's possible by the time we get around to the end of the year, it might make it onto my like top 3, which is really surprising to say about something that came from Netflix.
Yeah, right.
I had very low expectations with this because they haven't made a whole lot of good stuff.
No, they haven't,
or produced, whatever you want to say.
This is Netflix gold by their standards,
So this is that scene that I was talking about where they have this sort of sentimental moment while the two of them are on the crapper, and Kat can't read, and so Paul does all of the reading for him, and Paul finds out all this information about how he's got a wife and he has a kid who died, and we don't find out till later what happened. And it's just a somber moment, but it works really well for them. And then his buddy comes home later. It's the thing is the character interactions in this, all the stuff that's not just them during the war, is all of my favorite stuff from this movie. Yeah. Which is this like 30 minute span, about an hour in. It seems close to an hour. So wait, no, never mind. I'm looking at this wrong. But it's probably about a 30 minute span after the first like 45 minutes or so is when you get to them all kind of just living their lives during the war. And his buddy comes back. It's implied that he slept with one of the girls, and she gave him like a token. And they they're all just like completely into it. They're so excited, and it's like just this little taste of home, like this thing that they're being reminded of. They do great with this,
and then they have to go on this mission to find a whole group of new recruits that didn't come.
Yes,
and this is where the mustard gas, the gas mask, pays off, like that kind of like small payoff, but not in the way that we were expecting to see it.
Not what I wanted, but I did really like this scene because they're searching around for this other group, and they keep calling them kids, and so I don't know if this is like the new recruits that are coming in, but they end up finding them, and they're all dead in this room, and one of the characters is like they took their masks off too soon.
Yeah.
And it's just like how horrified like they all are, which is again something interesting to see, considering the way that we were talking about before, that this is their life now. This is the stuff that they're used to. This is a pretty good shot of that. Again, even something like this, this is not a happy thing. It's very well shot. It's great. Just the cinematography in this, their director of photography, whoever it was, just chef's kiss. Like,
yeah, right. I'm telling you, man,
good.
these scenes to where, like, the moments in between the war, like, and how the director focuses on them and allows the characters to express. Just, you get to see how the war is affecting the characters.
Yeah.
In all these intricate ways, and how they're in the moment, and missing home, and the psychological difficulties they go through. And it's just, man, I mean, and the cinematography with it,
man.
You just get to see the extent to which they go to try to see another day, just to live, just to survive. Mm-hmm. It's very much a survival story, while also seeing the impact war has on people and the carnage.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. That you can express so much about what a character is thinking and feeling just by showing accurate facial expressions.
Yes, like that scene you were talking about with Kat and Paul, where they're on the crapper, and Paul really doesn't say much, but you see everything you need to see with his facial reactions, his body language. Yeah. He doesn't have to say words, and it's just, they do such a great job in this movie with that.
It's something that works too, because they trust that the audience understands how Paul is feeling in that moment, because of how kind of uncomfortable you might feel when you find out that, like, someone you're pretty close to, that he has a dead son, I believe.
Yeah.
So we meet. I don't remember if this guy's the general or the captain, but you could say he's our villain.
I think he's the general. Yeah,
he's kind of the antagonist of the movie. What did you?
He carries that theme of, like, with him specifically, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, that how these men are fighting on behalf of those in power, right?
Yeah,
and one decision from these men in power resort to thousands of lives lost. Like, they're just sheep led to the slaughter. They don't care. It's about their position, what they think is best. They don't really value the lives of their fellow countrymen.
Yeah, he says somewhere in there, he has a conversation with the guy that's his like underling or whatever.
Yeah.
The guy, they're having a conversation, and he tells him, he's like, they have a conversation about about his parents, and how when he goes home, he's going to take over whatever the industry was that his parents were running. And I'll just say the captain, I don't know if that was his actual rank or not. But the captain essentially says that,
I think they say specifically that's a general.
He's a general. Okay. So the general is saying that his family has always known war. His father was involved. Okay. His father was in war, and that was also his industry, and so it's all he's really ever known. So the end of the war is the end of his career, is kind of the way that they're setting it up, the way that he sees it. And you start to begin to understand where this is probably headed. That this guy he's proud. He doesn't look at the troops that he's commanding as anything other than just pawns to be used in order to try to push to get victories. It's interesting. It reminds me a little bit of, he's sort of, if you want to take like Viserys, and how Viserys talked about, well, it's like, I was never a great general. I never won any great battles or had any great losses or anything like that. This guy's sort of, you could say his character is an example of what the opposite would be. Whereas like Viserys was doing everything for peace, and you saw the way that that was affecting his family and the way that he ran everything. This guy is that exact opposite, where it's like all he knows is war. All he knows is how to fight and try to plan out victories and try to push, because it's important. It's important to who he is.
Yeah, because he's trying to fill his father's shoes, right? Like his father was this. We get told later on that his father was this great war hero from whatever war in the 1800s with Germany, and he came home a hero to, a hero's welcome, and that's very much a leading factor, I think, of the implication of why he makes a decision at the end, is because he wants that same recognition that his father got.
Yeah, it's that I'll go down in the history books as like, this is something that they'll remember me for, and it's kind of interesting because ultimately it's futile.
But yeah, and you see, like, I really just like that scene too, because it shows him and the other like German leaders, just well fed. They're by a cozy fire. They're drinking this nice wine. It's not as hard for them as it is for the men in the trenches, and they're just whimsically deciding the fates of millions of people.
This scene is a really good example of that.
Yes, that his look, not him, but the what's his name, the Zemo. The guy that's trying to end the war. His look that he gives them is really good.
The previous scene is essentially them back in the trenches.
Yep.
And it was a really good idea. So you have all of the guys. I think they're headed back out. And then that leads. Oh yeah, here's another shot of the trenches, and that essentially leads into. We're just gonna keep calling him Zemo. I don't even know if they ever mention his name in the movie, but he sees one of his colleagues. I'm pretty sure he's got all of this bread, this his boiled egg, his orange juice. The guy's fat. He's not like you see that compared to all of the kids early on in the movie when they're all getting their uniforms, like how slender a lot of them are. They're very specific in the way that they cast certain people in this, and his physicality is on purpose. It's great. You're convincing me more and more, Joseph, that this movie is really good. Just going back through it.
Hey, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
So,
it's a good movie. I'm watching it again.
I think
it was too gruesome for my keeper to keep watching. She was going in and out with me, and I was picking on her. I'm like, come on. And
then so you also see that everyone else has these meals, and they're just showing that, and
it's comfort.
Mm-hmm. And they have to go in and they meet with the French leaders, and I think this is the scene where they basically tell them, like, this is it. This is the deal. You sign this. I think they tell him they have 3 days, and he's like, and the fighting will continue until it's signed. And they're like, that's it.
Yep. And they give very hard terms, like, hey, everything's going to keep. We're not negotiating. You accept it for what it is. And again, that's one of the impetuses of leading to World War II was a Treaty of Versailles, which is, they're signing the armistice, but it's essentially what they're giving here is also the same thing given with the Treaty of Versailles as well.
And this was another shot of the French, and it looked like it was probably French command and all of the good food that they also had. And it's such an interesting moment, and I can't remember logistically how it works, but I think they take this. His buddy earlier on, back when before they find all of their dead recruits in that room, his buddy takes a poster of a woman.
Yes.
And I think it's a little bit later, and this, again, the details and the setups and payoffs, they show him put the poster there before they start going into, I think, the
other side.
the next fight.
Yep.
So we're not too far away from it. Yeah, because here's this. And at the end, I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to the end of the movie, Paul finds it again, and it's that recognition. He finds the poster again. It's that recognition that they've basically gone back and forth over this 100 meters of territory.
And what have you really accomplished?
Yeah, and it's
nothing.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Profound. It's really good.
So yeah, they get into this fight. We see.
That scene of them, eating that food right there and that joy, and they're just scarfing it down there. You know, we don't know how long this moment's going to last.
Sausage,
and
the honey,
we're trying to get it down as fast as possible, and they have to quickly leave because they hear something shaking, and then that's when we get this nice touch for me, the first tanks ever implemented in war.
So this is gas, though, right? With the gas, there's like yellow stuff coming from the sides of. Let me see, like there. Is that or is that just?
I was assuming if that's gas, that would be very dumb because of unless it's coming from the Germans.
And that
but again, I would still imagine that those in the trenches would have the gas mask on in case the wind changed directions.
Right. So maybe not.
So maybe it's just smoke.
It's cover for them or something like that. I was looking for gas like the whole movie, if I'm being honest. So it's just one of those things.
Just really wanted it right.
But this, this was great, and that you see how it gets so brutal, dude. That like people are getting blown up. There's one dude that gets run over by one of the tanks, and they just show it. It's not. They're not even like, they're
not hiding away from it.
Yeah, they're like, we're not even going to like cut away before it like hits his head. It's like we're just gonna show you the whole thing.
Absolutely crushed, and the German, and it's so that I like them going from showing this brutality, and then it cuts to the general, and he's right outside the battle.
And again,
just watching everything.
They're really showing you that this guy who's like in charge, and he's not on the front lines with these kids. He's not. He's like the Germans are allowing what they call at the beginning of the movie the quote unquote greatest generation to put themselves up against everything.
Yep.
So yeah, they all go out. They're like
all from the comfort of their. His elegant housing
trains and his like housing thing.
Yeah.
I don't think he leaves it the entire movie, right? Maybe is he on the floor? Like, does he
He's
go
on
outside
the train car
at the very end when he tells
maybe
him that last part?
But he doesn't even go to the last battle with them.
No,
he just stays behind.
And that's the thing, man.
And it shows his how much of a coward he is too. He's not willing to lead his men.
Yeah, and one of the great things about this is that they show oh shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say it's like Corliss says it's like history remembers names.
Yep.
And that's kind of a similar theme with that guy. It's like it's kind of implied. It's like he wants his name recognition to go down in the history books. Everything
his father's name is recognized. Has this great legacy. I want to have that great legacy too.
Yep.
And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish that.
And so they push back. You get a really good. Maybe we're not quite there yet. There's a really, really good moment where Paul gets trapped in a. It's coming up.
Yep.
I think they get pushed.
He gets trapped in this.
In the hole.
In the hole where it's probably some artillery shell created, and
because they push across, take that spot, and they get pushed all the way back, and then they get pushed further, right? Is that how?
Yep.
Out of that original trench.
When he gets in that trench right there, in that hole right there, he spends a good bit of time there, just like trying to hide, and because he realizes that the French forces are coming up behind him, and that. The German forces have moved on, and then that's when he looks behind him and sees that French guy staring at him, aiming at him, I should say.
Yes.
His rifle, and then an artillery shell It doesn't
hits.
get him, but
It knocks the guy into
the hole.
Yeah. Hang on, let's. Boom! That was good timing.
How did that not kill him?
Yeah, there's one other time I think Paul gets hit with something. I think it's in that previous scene. It's something lands and like blows up like pretty close to him, and it either knocks him into this hole or he gets like dazed and then falls in the hole. I can't remember exactly how that happens, but yeah, there's just a couple moments in the movie where you're like, all right, I have to kind of go with it for the sake of
that
what's going to happen.
artillery that landed. So when I saw it, if I remember correctly, it was far enough away to where, okay, there's a reasonable possibility this wouldn't be deadly.
Yeah.
And, sent him flying and kind of like knocked him out. But yeah, Paul ends up getting a fight with that Frenchman and stabs him. And, then he goes away from him because he's like, he doesn't want to hear him die.
Oh,
and
it's
he's
brutal.
just not. Yeah, he's just not dying. He's sitting there coughing up blood, gasping for air, and Paul just starts crying and goes over to him. And it's just the humanity. He goes over, looks, and he starts smearing the mud from the guy's mouth and face, and he goes down with his handkerchief, I think, and soaks water from like all the blood's in there, all the dirt, but gets it and rinses it, puts it in the guy's mouth so he can get some water, get the mud out and everything. And he starts to pull out the guy's knife. He pulls out his knife and the guy starts freaking out. He's like, no. And he opens up the guy's jacket or whatnot, uniform. And then he searches the guy and pulls out and sees that he has this family, and he keeps it in his jacket. And
the intention maybe being that he's going to try to like find them later.
Yep.
There was something that I kind of got from
and
that.
apologize because he apologizes to the guy in the scene, doesn't he? He says, "I'm sorry," I believe.
Either way, that's if it's not said, it's heavily implied that that's what's going on.
He cries on the guy. I mean, I took this person's life, and for what?
Yeah, exactly. It was great. Kind of expecting it to be a turning point for him in this entire conflict. Unfortunately, that's not really what happens.
Nope.
Okay, so after this, they start hearing rumors essentially that the war is about to be over.
Yep.
And chaos is starting to
ensue.
It take place on the front line. This is all kind of taking place where the general is, and a lot of the soldiers are also staying in this area. They're like running around and like threatening the cooks for the food and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And we unfortunately, one of his buddies, we didn't mention this, but one of his buddies gets killed in that last conflict. He gets flamethrowered.
Yes.
Which was man.
Dude, his buddy, so they were retreating from the French, and one of his buddies stayed behind a tank and was shooting at them.
Yeah.
And he ends up throwing down his weapon and putting his hands up, and the flamethrower guys for the French just light him on fire.
Yep.
And Paul watches it all.
And it's like right before he ends up in the trench.
Yep, and ends up killing that French soldier.
And then we eventually, he and Kat, I'm skipping through a little bit of this because I think they do finally sign. That is the Treaty of Versailles, right? That they're signing in this, or is that?
I think so. I think it's either that, it's an armistice that's for this. Let's just say it's the Treaty of Versailles, because that's essentially. I mean, they don't get to negotiate. It is what it is, and the French just wanted to humiliate them, and not just the French too, but the USA, England, all the Allies' power didn't give Germany any chance to kind of rebuild, and it was a treaty signed before with terms given that weren't given to a defeating opponent prior to that in Europe's history.
I was looking for, I guess it happened, I was a little off with it, but there's a scene where it happened somewhere in here where his friend who wanted to be in like the police for Germany, the guy that we were talking about, he kills him. He takes a fork and he jabs it into his throat.
So you see before
Oh yeah, there
he
is set up
gets
for that. Sorry.
he gets shot in the knee,
Yeah.
and he's like, I'm not gonna be able to be an MP now, and you get that scene, and then Paul leaves to go get some food, and they come back, they bring the soup to him, and he's like, hey, we got some soup, and Jordan says, did you bring in cutlery? And they're like, yeah, and he hands him a fork, and you just see him staring at the fork, and because Jordan's like, I'm not gonna be able to be anything now. He stays, I'm not gonna be a cripple in this world.
Yeah.
And then he just stabs himself in the neck and kills himself. And you just see that gripping reality of during this time period, what these, the difficulties he's been faced, to put it lightly.
Yeah. So they sign, and they sign with about 45 minutes left in the movie, and I was sitting there like, okay, maybe Paul and Kat are good, maybe. God. So they a couple hours before end,
because he talks about right here, like I don't know if it's in this scene or the previous scene, that Kat talks with Paul about having more children, like during all of this, and they're coming from all these moments of barely making it out alive, right, to these horrific battles, and they're just barely surviving, and then this tragedy that they're in, but yet they're still fantasizing about life after the war, and having these just beautiful, this fantastical moment of being able to get out of the reality of what they're in.
Yep. So they go back again to the farmer's house. They're trying to get some food. It's kind of like a special thing for them. It's like this farmer's here, and they think that they get away with it. And then Paul, you have the shot. Let's see if I can find it. The son of the farmer, whoops, he has this like look on his face, like, and you kind of knew, okay, now let me ask you, did you get the feeling that this kid would have been able to catch up to them?
No, I did not. Okay. That's actually, this was the part of the movie that I was like,
it's one of those things that, as far
you
as
have to really suspend your disbelief.
Yeah, it's not that I don't like what happens. It's more of
how
this kid had to. About. Yeah, I mean, because they were booking it away from these guys, and they don't really tell you how far that they went, but they're setting up that this kid's like pissed about them constantly, because the idea
constantly stealing their food.
the idea being that these guys have come probably more than these two times to take food from them over the past like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So they run away, and Kat decides that he needs to go into the woods to go use the restroom. And it was pretty odd. This was, as far as like stuff's concerned, it was pretty obvious what was going to happen. About to happen. Again, it's why this movie slightly reminds me of a horror movie, because there's just elements of it that feel in line with stuff that you would see in something like that. And so, he hears something, and he turns around, and the kid's there, and the kid shoots him.
Yep. And how that kid got there so fast?
I mean, he kind of teleported, dude. Man. It seemed like it was really quick.
Bro, Usain Bolt.
And what's the interesting thing is that all they really needed to do was show that the kid was following them. Just give us like 1 or 2 moments of him knowing kind of where they're headed and tracking them down. That's all they really had to do. It wouldn't have taken much long. I mean, the movie's already 2.5 hours long. It's not like an extra minute.
Another 5 minutes is gonna.
So they, you don't realize it at first, because they kind of implicate that just for a second that maybe Kat shot the kid.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought was going to happen, and it turns out
that's what I did too, and then it turns out no, he actually did get shot. And then somehow the kid ran away.
Yeah, and so he carries them all the way back to the base. It's really far. They pass some trucks along the way, and then
don't stop to help them because they're all drunk and not really paying attention.
Yeah, and so by the time he gets Kat back, it turns out I think he hit his liver. Yeah, because he mentioned something about
his liver, black blood. Yep.
And Kat had passed away at some point during that. So Paul is now completely alone.
And you see this, like, he started out very eager, happy, like wide-eyed, right? To join the war. And then at this point, in this moment, now he's just cold, aloof, and just kind of morally dead inside.
Oh,
just
he's morally
cold-hearted.
down. Yeah, I mean, there's just not there's hardly anything left for him. He's seen
No spirit in him.
everything's been taken away from him that he kind of was holding on to.
Held dear.
All he's got left is that handkerchief from his friend. We don't even see what was really interesting. I'm pretty sure this is the case. His one friend who had the handkerchief, we don't even know what happened to him.
No, I think he got, so when they were retreat, it was a brief moment, and I would have to go back, but when they're retreating, when the tanks come, they get separated.
Right.
And I think it's implied that he ended up dying, or
Right.
at least, lost. Right.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know because I don't remember anything specific. Because I remember the part where he gets separated, and then that was the last time I remember seeing him.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there was ever anything said or if the implication is that, it's like during that whole thing, they wanted to, you had all these on-screen deaths for his friends, so maybe there was something to show, like, sometimes they don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
Because it is through Paul's perspective, so. And he doesn't come back for that the final battle.
Yep.
So I get the implication is no matter whatever, he probably died. And so this was what I was talking about before, where this kid gets out of the truck and they're still sending in brand new recruits. And Paul, now having been out there for 2.5 years, he kind of like pushes the kid along, like gets him going, which I thought was, again, nice little touch.
I like the touch of the bullet in the back of the helmet from the opening scene to where they're at night, and when they first get to the trenches and they hear something, they fire their weapon, and they stay in the same spot, and the French shoot and knock his helmet off, and the guy's like, I think Kat tells him, when you shoot, it's either Kat or the captain there. Yeah. When you shoot, you got to move.
Yep. Yeah, that was a really good moment too. And so we basically learned that they're sending them back out. It's like there's roughly going to be 15 minutes left, and they're going to push across the trench one more time for the pride of this general.
Yep.
And the French are celebrating. They're not really. They're not thinking these people are going to do this. And the commander, whoever that guy is with the mustache, he's the one that hears them, I think, and gets them all going. And it's such an interesting thing because it's very sad. It's this sad, desperate attempt at the last minute to do something, and how hopeless it is while you're watching it happen.
Yep. Right. Oh no, they're going.
You feel for the Frenchmen too, because these guys are like, it's done finally, and
it really underscores the theme that his soldiers are just pawns to him, and the machinations of his plans and what he wants and his legacy and his pride and narcissism, and they're just, as I said earlier, lambs led to the slaughter.
Mm-hmm. And so Paul goes through this whole thing. He beats a dude,
saves the kid's life.
Yeah, saves that kid's life, and ultimately he gets.
Dude, this scene I like because he's fighting with this Frenchman that he meets, and they get down into one of the tunnels, and from a callback to the original for when there's an artillery bombardment, right? And you could see them look at each other, and they're like, just by the body language, let's stop fighting.
Yeah. It's kind of this moment of realization where it's like, what are we doing? And then a guy comes out of the dark and stabs Paul. And runs off. Like, it's just such it's like, it's kind of this like jarring moment for everyone involved and probably for the audience as well. And then he leaves, and that's
it's not jarring for that French guy because he's just used to enemy and just runs off.
Yep.
And good sequence.
It gets him right in the heart too, because I was trying to figure it out for a second. Like, he stabbed him right in the heart.
Yeah.
Right there.
It really just underscores the
God, I love this.
the heartbreaking cycle of death. You know what I mean? That's been displayed from the beginning to the end of the movie.
Yeah, because
recruits come in, die.
And so it's like the guy goes up in the trenches, from the trenches at the beginning, dies. We find out he dies. We follow Paul through the whole thing. Paul dies, and then we get the perspective of the kid that he saved in the last like couple minutes.
Yeah,
because we see
a callback to the beginning of the movie when Paul, got hit by artillery and he's eating bread, and then he's given the bag to pick up.
And here's the poster.
Yep,
from like earlier
dog
on.
tags.
Yeah. And it does not end on a happy note for anyone. And this is what you were talking about, where the kid that he saves, he goes along and he recognizes, when he gets to Paul, he recognizes him.
Yep. The guy that saved him. Really just heartbreaking story. But I think, man, just a great, heartbreaking, but great story.
I even like that the kid takes the memento.
Yeah.
Like he knows that it's like important because it's, Paul's holding on to it at the end, and it meant something to him. And again, all of this without having to give any kind of dialogue. Paul's not like, take this. It was good for me during, you know what I mean? Like it's not any, and it just kind of ends the way it opened. Everything's quiet. Man, it's so good. Yeah, I recommend this. Go watch this movie. If you can deal with the violence. Yeah, definitely.
Well worth it.
I think definitely a recommend.
Apt for our time right now too.
Yeah, very much so. It's like that reminder of war. What happens when you are the foot soldiers versus the people who are pushing for it to happen? Sort of those different dynamics, and that people might not be telling you the truth about everything that's going on. We can probably leave it at that. We don't have to dig too deep into that topic today.